Today I'm pulling apart a Bafang e-bike battery. It was having problems engaging, and I've narrowed it down to the interlocking pins. So when the battery slides on, it's got a docking system so that the pins connect for your negative and your positive. And it appears that those locking pins are a bit of a problem. I really didn't want to pull this thing apart. I've had a lot of fun with my e-bike, but I really didn't want to go anywhere near the battery. But I've had to do that today. So given the risk that it is, I thought I would share it because it's probably new territory and a bit of a scary thing for people to do. I actually do have my wheelbarrow right behind this camera. So that way, if this were to compromise in any way and you got the thermal runaway and the battery started to ignite, I would be ditching it into the barrow and then wheeling it out onto the back lawn. So it's good to have things like that in place. And look, if you've got a fire extinguisher, good luck, because from what I hear, these things just don't go out. So I think a wheelbarrow is your best bet. Wheel it out and then tip it onto the lawn and then let it burn itself out while you go get the hose. Anyway, so I've started to pull it apart, but now I'm going to go through and show you what goes where and what to expect and how to pull it apart safely so that you don't have any sort of smouldering or effects. So this is how your battery basically is. You turn it upside down and you've got 2, 4, 6, 8 screws, Phillips heads, that you can take out, and then you can carefully lift this up and then pivot it over like this, and everything is still going to be joined as it is to the actual case. So you'll need to be careful. So what I did is I very, very carefully removed the power switch. So the power switch pops out toward you, it comes external. There's a lot of silicone around it, but basically I was able to shave that away very, very carefully. And then what I was able to do was to unsolder them, so that way I retained as much length as the original length, in fact, of the actual switch leads, because you don't want to go clipping them and making them any shorter. The USB docker, which apparently is useless for an iPhone, that one is just 2 Phillips heads, so you can undo those. You'll probably just need a micro Phillips head to get to those. And these two here are the gauge leads that carry the full current of the actual battery down to the motor. So they go down to this part here and they trace along the bottom here. They come up underneath the switch. So they actually connect to the actual docking part, like so. And then of course, your docking part that sits on the diagonal of your bike slots into that, but of course I've got the cover off in order to remove that, so that goes like that. So that's your interlocking system. So what I did to get rid of mine, again, there was lots of silicone, so that actually sits in here. Sorry for the faffing around. So that sits in there like that, and you've actually got underneath the silicone parts here, you've actually got 2 Phillips head screws. So unscrew those, and then what will happen is that this will then just pop out. Okay, so this case is actually still good for me. It's this part here that is the problem. Now I clipped off as much of the lead as I could at the actual terminal in order to save the length, because this is all good. It's this here that's the problem. So what I noticed was where these two come together and where they interlock, like so, one of the pins was corroded, and one of the pins was really starting to look in a bad way. Now, here's the end result. It's the positive. So the positive, as you can see, has basically just come off. And somewhere here, I've actually got the pin for it. And when I bring that past my nose, it stinks, okay? So that was starting to melt. Basically the pin or lead had basically just become compromised. And so I don't know if you can see into there, but it had started to melt. And now this is interesting here. This is the bit that I want to show you if I can. On the positive here, where it's really melted out, it actually started to melt and to bulge out. So that was the first sign really of fire, of me riding it. So I know that that was starting to melt in that because smoke was starting to come off of it. So I shut it down and then I walked the bike back home. I was just testing out on the street. So that's blistered up. That's, you know, 1 minute short of catching fire, if that. So as you can see here, it's all melted out and I've clipped it off. Now, while I'm here, I should let you know, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 smaller pins here. They do nothing, electronically anyway. So possibly what they might do is just locate. They might be locators. But I can tell you on the other side here that they do have terminators that you can solder onto, but nothing solders onto them. You've got your negative and your positive on your 2 big leads here, which make a whole lot of sense. What I was thinking was one of these smaller ones might be battery intelligence, telling the computer where the battery's at and all of that sort of stuff. But no, nothing connects to it. All right. So as you can see, I've gone and put some terminators onto these leads here. I've been careful with this second screw not to screw it down because I don't want exposed wire after I put it all back together. And I've also put terminators onto here. I was really, really careful not to play around or pull on anything in here. The last thing that I want to do is put any stress on any of that componentry or wiring in there and then find that after I've put it all back together and I charge it for the first time, I have a fire. So minimum interaction with that. I am pleased, and it has given me peace of mind to see what it's like in here. There's a lot of silicone cushioning. There's these cushions here. I like the fact that this is all wrapped in shrink wrap. So I think that they are Panasonic batteries or Panasonic componentry, but I'm not going to be pulling that out. I am not going to start getting curious about any of that sort of stuff. I just don't want to go there. So what I need to do now is I've contacted Green Global or whoever it was that I bought this from, and I've asked them for a new one of these docking mechanisms. Now I'll get the rest of it. So see, this sort of sits in there like that. And now you're more familiar with it probably because this is where your battery now comes onto here. So that comes out. So if you have one of these and then it stops working, be aware that you do have a fuse here, and you should probably be aware of that because you would have had to have separated these 2 parts to mount it onto your bike. But if you've got a store-bought bike, well then you may not know that that fuse sits down here, if indeed it is like mine. I think that's a 50 amp fuse. It's a real big one. Fuse is supposed to protect your wiring, hey? Oh well, looks like it didn't this time around. So I'll be ordering a new one of these. That's about $15 from Alibaba for this whole thing, including the connector on the end. And then what I'm going to do now is go upstairs and see if I can not order one of those, but order one of these. So I've got to find out what make that is and then order that plug. And then I'll basically reassemble that back into there. It'll all be nice and clean. I will solder on my wires and hopefully all the soldering will be good and it will be okay. So I will come back to you when it's ready to reassemble, see how we go, and hopefully we've got a happy ending to all of this. Thanks for watching.